Okay, for this session of Meaningful Conversation, we have Devin Reed, Head of Content at Gong. Welcome here, Devin.
Thanks, man. Always good to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked for some time together. I know you have done some great things before. You know, it was in this presidential club in sales. You had the Reveal podcast, created maybe the most sought after content strategy out there at Gong. But the thing is, I really want to ask you, I think I know what you're passionate about because like I know you're creating a lot of these things out in the content and so on. But the question from me to you is actually, what are you passionate about?
Passionate. I would say, like, when it comes to content, the things I'm most passionate about are tying it to strategic growth. So that's kind of like my point of view today is like content has changed a lot in terms of how popular it is, how we use it to communicate. And it hasn't quite made its way over to the B2B realm yet. Like B2C content's really good. And I think the thing that's missing is like having a lot more intention behind the content that's created out there. Like really understanding what value does it provide? How is this helping, with your company, right? It could be your narrative. It could be how are we getting the narrative out there? How are we differentiating ourselves from the market? How are we making sure everyone knows we have a new product, right? All these different things content can be used for. But I think people aren't really using it to its full potential. And that's usually because it's ineffective or disjointed. So that's kind of like my thing right now is just helping other marketers and content creators understand the different levers they can pull to be more effective with their content.
Yeah, it makes sense because like something I've seen, like if you're looking like the maybe last 2-3 years, I think the big shift for me at least when I really joined the game was like, 2 years ago when I think like people seems to focus a lot more like, valuable content than before. It feels, at least to me, it was more like, driving people to webinar or some SEO kind of game. And, and now shift to more, value-based content or like brand built content.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Regarding that topic, how do you think the future will look like?
I think it's just going to continue going in that trend, right? Which is like brands. And I know it's like, almost like some brands step out of line sometimes and like try to do too much. And some of like the like the kind of like human conversations, if you will, or like, some of the political stuff. But for like right now in B2B, I think it's just going to continue where you're going to see more content roles open up. A lot of B2B companies are starting to do it as almost like the phrase like internal or media agency or media team internally. And so you're going to see the people who take content or I should say the people that say brand building seriously and believe in content. You'll start to see more of those kind of like agency like approaches, which is where people are like, hey, let's build basically like a content stream of just really entertaining and informative content. Kind of think of it like as, Bleacher Report or, I don't know, Barstool Sports, if you're familiar with them, like, and you can say what you want about both those. I know those are kind of like, out there, but to be honest, they're growing huge brands. Like they are working really well. Right. And so it's like, I think people are going to start to see CMOs, head of marketing are going to start to understand the investment and the worthiness of the investment. But the other part is the long term, like you kind of mentioned right before this, like it's a long term game. Like you're not going to build an audience in 6 months. So I think that people start to understand like, hey, if you invest in it now, you'll win in a year or two. It does take a little bit of time, but it is worth it.
Yeah, on top of that, like I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, like the measurements for these kind of things. But since we're on the like content topic, what have you brought from like the B2C world to the B2B? Because like for me, a lot of B2B companies are utilizing B2C things. One thing like was the personalization, really thinking about the buyer journey and these kind of things. Is there any things in the content game you saw from like the B2C world that you turned to the B2B world?
Yeah, I think it's like, I mean, I want to say quality is what comes up. Like you just like, I enjoy being like scrolling through Instagram more than LinkedIn. Right. And you can say for a million different reasons, but like the brands on Instagram that I follow, like they're playing in the attention economy. Right. So they understand like I'm on the scroll. They have a few seconds to like hit or miss. And I think they take it seriously because like the content's good. They do it often. Like there's a full strategy and they're trying to get your attention. Right. It could be for another program, it could be like, some basketball game they're promoting later tonight. It could be, new joggers that they want me to buy. But the thing is like for these brands, like especially like the menswear brand is like a lot of the stuff that they're creating isn't just buy this thing right now, buy this thing right now, buy this thing right now. No, it's like there's actually a really good brand called 10 Tree. Every time you buy a product, they plant 10 trees.
Okay.
So their
Yeah,
brand,
I know.
are you okay, you're familiar with them. So
yeah, I know what it is.
their content isn't just like, here's a new hoodie, you should go buy it. A lot of times it's like their point of view, right? It's like sharing like, hey, this year, I don't know, some like nature-based facts, right? Because like aligns with their POV and like trying to help the environment. So they have like environmentalist type content along with their products, right? And so when you're consuming their content, you're getting value instead of just feel like, oh wow, they really want me to buy. They really want me to buy.
But do you think that like ties, like jumping there? Do you think that ties a lot, like, because like the shift that I've seen, like people talking about, me myself as well, is like today in B2B world, you're talking to like a real person, right? But I think people still thought like talking to companies, and I think that feels for me like one of the factors. You're going closer to the BTC world in that sense.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is like it's less transactional. That's what I'm saying with like this 10 Tree example, is like they're building a relationship with you through this, right? And like earning your trust and providing value and all that. Versus in B2B, people are like you said, here's download this thing, here's a demo, here's a webinar, whatever. A lot of it isn't really like value based. So it's more transactional. So I agree. It's going to be more like, I don't love the phrase like relationship building, but they're going to play that long game, right? Of like, you read a few of our posts, you show up to some of our events, and then you like us and trust us. And then, maybe you'll come inbound. It's not always just like this hard outbound game.
Yeah, I'm like on that topic that I was talking about, like I was supposed to ask this later, but like since we are so deep in this, right? The $1 million question, we're talking about like the attribution, we're talking about, the hidden funnels kind of things. People are stopped getting content. I see that talks about every single day on LinkedIn, with all that in factors and marketing, you need to prove yourself, because to the board, to the CEO, you need to prove your value and these kind of things. Like, how do you handle that?
How to handle value, like providing
value?
value?
Essentially, like for the things you do, for the projects you're doing. I mean, you've been very successful at that, what you're doing, but like still you need to saying, hey, we're doing this because of that, and we with the end goal, how we have these revenue goals, right?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is to align with the CEO's goals. So every CEO has a slide they present every year. It's usually on hand at like, you probably see it, right? Every senior leadership meeting, maybe once a week or once a month, whatever. And what you need to do is tie your content to those strategic goals. Not all of them, but one of them, right? So there's probably 3 to 5. I'm seeing 3 to 5 usually on everyone, right? Number one, almost always increasing revenue. That's like always the one, right? If you had 20 million ARR last year, you want 40 next year, whatever. So if you can tie your content to revenue, great. I specifically did that in my career. I didn't want to just be a brand marketer because it can be wavering, right? If you have a really bad 6 months and marketing isn't showing up, but you're building brand, it's easier to cut that from your line item, go, we'll get a demand gen person in here, right? And so I wanted to be both.
Yeah.
And so look at that list. Like other ones, like just from my example, my experience has been like creating a category. Like how can content create a category? How can content create pipeline for certain territories or certain segments in your business? Brand awareness was one of them early on with Gong, because we were a Series A startup or a Series B startup, and no one knew who we were. And so it was like, where there's a new space in conversation intelligence. There's like 2-3 players in it. We wanted to be number one. So we made brand awareness like a specific target. And so when you can tie your content and your resources you're asking for and the time that you're spending to one of those goals every quarter or sooner, you can go to your CEO and say, hey, here's the pipeline that we generated. Here's the inbound traffic, or, the branded traffic that we're looking, that we're getting, and so on and so forth, whatever will line up with those goals that I was sharing. Yeah. And when you see things going up and to the right, people understand, okay, you're supporting this. Oh, wow, that deal closed because you held a webinar, and then you found this VP sales that you didn't know, and then they bought like 2 weeks later. Oh, it's working, right? And then what happens when something's working? You invest in it. You're there, all right, cool. What can you do with more? If I gave you another headcount, if I give you $100,000, right? And those are the conversations you want to get to, where you have to prime them up front, right? No CEO is just going to come to you and go, hey, Devin, I got $100,000 and I need $1 million in revenue.
No,
It
that's
just doesn't work that way. You might get the opposite, which is I need $1 million in revenue, but you might not get the $100,000 to go get it.
Yeah, okay, I agree. No, I agree with you. And that's the reason, like, have these leading indicators, because revenue sometimes take more time, but you still have this pipeline and have a hint to, like, it definitely goes to the right direction. But again, like, I do agree, like, the whole marketing special content, that does take time. I mean, you don't see result in a month. It probably take like 6 months until you see 2 results, which sometimes I think for marketing, can be like, hard to beat in that sense. I mean, you need to be quite confident. You need to have confidence with your CEO as well.
Yeah. And 6 months, even for me, like I would consider myself fairly confident. Like if I put my head down on a project for 6 months and didn't have anything to show for it, I would get nervous around month 3 or 4. Cause you're like running in the tunnel. You don't see the end of the light, but you're like, I think I'm going the right direction. So what I do is I set milestones. So you have big goals and then you have milestones, right? So for example, Gong, we wanted to get to 100,000 followers on LinkedIn on our corporate page.
I will ask more about LinkedIn. That's for sure. Like I was like, I want to know, like, jumping the LinkedIn strategy as well. But yeah, continue.
Sure. Yeah. So we're about to cross that in like 2-3 weeks. So we're getting really close. But when we started that goal 2.5 years ago, when I started in marketing, we were like 14,000 followers. And Udi, our CMO, I kind of thought he was kidding, but he wasn't kidding. He's like, I want you to get to 100,000 followers. And at the time, I'm like, that's so far away. I have no idea how many get there.
But a question to that, essentially, like, obviously, like, growing LinkedIn followers and, activity there is important in many aspects. But was there any, like, plan why you want to reach that goal? Or did you guys see previous success, like, growing LinkedIn?
For sure. So the goal is arbitrary, right? Like the number 100,000 sounds awesome, but there's really no difference between 9,050 and 104,000. Like it's just an arbitrary number. Yeah. One is like it's a big milestone, like it feels good, but the strategy behind it is simple. So a couple things. One was we wanted to build an audience that we could eventually sell to. There wasn't really any brand in B2B tech, like sales tech, that has like a real brand that people loved. And I mean that lovingly. Like if you're hearing this and you work at one of those companies, I'm not digging anybody, but
the raving fans.
Yeah, like we just were like, look, let's create a brand that people actually love, right? Yeah. Aside from the product. So that was it. And you can sell to those people eventually, right? If you're an SDR and you love us today, you might be a manager one day. You might be a director one day. You might buy Gong one day. Or you might be a VP today, right? Consume content like Gong and decide to buy us, in your upcoming budget cycle. So that was kind of the immediate. The other part was we built a lot of branded content or value-driven content, no CTA. And then we started sprinkling in webinar signups, content downloads that's gated, so on and so forth. And that would fuel a lot of our demand gen. And so we get a lot of sales opportunities just from LinkedIn. And so we knew, hey, we can get people into the funnel, right? Like LinkedIn's the top of the funnel. People are in the, on the LinkedIn sphere, they see Gong, they sign up. Now we've got their email address. We have a whole engine just around email and events. So we're like, LinkedIn is like the net, so to speak. And then we're pulling people down the funnel as we get them more educated on what we do and all that. So we've gotten tons of revenue out of it. The 100,000 was just it was just like a big number to go,
and that's a great goal.
Get that, go get a lot of people that know about it. So it's kind of an awareness play, but it made, like I said, it kind of had other effects too.
No, but I think you quite a valid point there, because like there are a lot of good, companies out there, but I would say within B2B, it's not that many brands that are great in terms of that, you truly following the brand, right? And I think you guys achieved it really well, and you few more that I think doing well on it, but you can count them in a hand basically.
And I'm happy to see it, by the way. Like I like seeing that other brands are like taking it seriously and wanting to build their page, because it just makes the sales tech space better.
Yeah, no, I follow you. I like that, and that makes full sense. But like, how do you guys, started creating all these, and also on top of that, like how is the relationship, with the revenue, like the demand gen and sales? Because like essentially for me, all these ties together, your revenue together with success and sales and marketing, and that's how it should be from my point of view. But I would love to hear like what's your view, and how does it look for you in reality?
Yeah, so I'm on the demand gen team. So my content team sits under our senior director of marketing, who's like our we call it revenue marketing, demand gen, whatever you want to call it. So I'm on that team, and I specifically wanted to be on demand gen to learn everything that we just talked about and to continue to learn these things, because basically one of my like early mentors was like, if you learn how to generate revenue, you will get a bigger salary as you progress your career. If you only can build a brand, it'll be hit or miss, right? Because Marcus might be like, Deb, love what you're doing. I want to build a big old brand. No worry about revenue. And I can do that. That is easier, by the way, for anyone wondering. It is easier, but I didn't want that. I wanted to have options. So I'm like, let me be on the demand gen team. Let me learn these things. And so that's why I believe in that. To get sales involved is kind of a hard thing. I think the first thing is like, they have to enjoy the content or see the value in it. So I admittedly have a leg up because I market to salespeople. So the content is for sales and I have a sales team. So I get that. Like, I get that's easier. The other thing though, is they see the LinkedIn, going back to LinkedIn, they see people loving the brand on LinkedIn. They see people sharing the content. They see all these things. So it's like affirmation, right? And like social proof, like, oh, okay, so marketing's doing stuff that I like, but marketing's also doing stuff my buyers like. Like, we hear it on Gong calls all the time, because we record sales calls. Type in LinkedIn, type in content, and you'll get a bunch of hits of people like, oh, you know what, Mark, I don't really know what Gong does, but I've seen you guys on LinkedIn, and or something to that effect, right? So like, we're bringing people in through awareness and through content.
Yeah, that helped.
That was early on, and now we're getting more like, yeah, I know, I know more about what you guys do because I've been following you for a year. I saw this webinar with Devin and all these things. So, if you're on a sales call and someone comes in and goes, either I don't really know what you do, but I like you, right? Or I do kind of know what you do and I like you. That's way easier than having to outbound cold call people who go, wait, what is Gong? Like, I've never heard of you in my life, right? So when you're making salespeople's lives easier and then those deals close, right, you start to build up that trust. It's the same thing as building a brand. Every way, whether you're building it with your internal teams or external audience, it's still building trust and credibility over time. That's what a reputation is.
Yeah, because like, this is something I really feel out there. I mean, I work myself with sales in that sense, and like, they need to enjoying it, but it also needs to be value for it. And as you say, like, if you create things that makes their life easier, and instantly you are the hero in the other team, right?
For sure.
And like, that's something, we trying ourselves, trying to get the engagement. We do marketing people instead of salespeople. So it's probably a little bit easier from your side, but again, content should be enjoy for everyone, right?
Yep.
So like, we need to talk about the content strategy, especially for like, because social selling, right? All the sales turning a lot of social selling. You do LinkedIn, do all these kind of things. How are you guys supporting that, or are you guys supporting it, or is that part of what goes around on Gong, or is that just something people do themselves? What's the story?
So, you're talking about like Gong employees sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, especially sharing, but also writing a lot of things.
Yeah. So it comes down to like two things, really, Marcus. It's like empowerment and enablement. So empowerment is like telling people, showing people that like, we want you to do this. You're able to do this. It's kind of like feeling like you can, right? Like intrinsic. And so it starts with the top. So our CEO is active on LinkedIn. Our CMO is active on LinkedIn. And I think also when you see your senior executives active, right? And I don't mean, they're not trying to be thought leaders. They're like posting every single day on what you should or shouldn't do. They're just like company updates, personal updates. Like, they're just very active on the platform, right? And then you see the Gong brand is super active on LinkedIn, right? And then there's myself, who's very active on LinkedIn. I'm kind of like leading the charge from the content standpoint. So you're kind of like, it's like if you have a group of friends and they all go to the gym. Like, you're probably going to start going to the gym, like even just a little bit, or you might start jogging or something, right? Because you're just hanging out in that like atmosphere, right? So it's like, okay, you're like learning and seeing it firsthand. So that's just like, if you want to. There's no pressure, by the way. No, it's like not part of the interview process. There's no demand to do it. Literally none. I'm a big advocate for, all we can do is ask. Yeah, I can't force you to do anything. I can't force you to change your headline on your LinkedIn profile. I can't like, it's your LinkedIn profile, right? My hope is that I can build trust with you and provide you value, and that you will want to go do that if you choose to, right?
But if for like, or shake, like, go ahead. For like, it's when I like on top of what you're saying there, like for what I feel like for Gong, or what I see in others, like, it used to come from like top down. Like, people need to, see the leaders are doing that, because then you feel like, more approved doing so, or whatever.
Right. Well, and also there's execs out there that specifically don't want their, employees on LinkedIn for whatever, for crazy reasons. I know why, but they're crazy. And so then I think other employees sometimes, especially if they're younger, like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm just happy to have my job. I don't want to mess anything up. So that's why I think it's big to kind of show and lead by example. The enablement part is making it easy to share on LinkedIn. So there's kind of a couple of things. I think a lot of people will see what Gong does and think like, oh, I need to activate my employees so they can share the things I want them to share, right? Which is like our events and our content, all that stuff, and our updates.
Yeah.
That's a small piece of it, right? So what we do is a couple of things. So one, during onboarding, our CMO does like a marketing strategy session. He shares like what, why, and when we do on LinkedIn. My social media team has a specific session just for social media to share people like best practices, right? Because people come into Gong and they're like, you know, just like you said, I see everybody's active. Like I want to be
exactly.
like,
right.
But like, what are the guidelines? What's funny is they say, what are the rules? And we're like, there are no rules. There's just guidelines. So we walk them through like, you know, here's our LinkedIn strategy. You know, Devin posts these Gong Labs articles. He'll ask you from time to time to share them. It's completely optional. You know, here's, you know, we have like 10 like kind of like guidelines, like, you know, here's some people love stories, people love personal experiences. We don't recommend being political, but it's your call at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, if you're unsure, Slack one of us and we'll like read your post and just give you some guidance, right? Which doesn't happen very often, which is fine. And so then, and so that's like just when you start being an employee. And then every like quarter or so, I do a similar LinkedIn session with the team. I do kind of like Q&A, you know, I'll go into lunch and learn. Here's what linked, you know, here's what we're doing again. Same concept. Here's what's going on. Hey, if you want to do a quick, you know, 30-minute session with me, say yes, I'll book it and we'll go get, you know, a Zoom room and just hang out. People mostly just want to ask questions, hang out a little bit, get comfortable. And then people start writing their own posts and all that. So we really do like nurture it. As you can hear, it does take a little bit of work, but it's fun. Like this should be a fun project where you're like getting to know your employees instead of like all right, Marcus, now that you work at Gong, you have to do 3 posts a week and one has to be what we say. Like
that will never work.
No one would do that. No one would do it. It would be super robotic, right? Like you can tell the LinkedIn posts are authentic because they sound like a human being wrote them, not Devin, a content marketer, wrote them and copied and pasted.
Yeah, I can second that, right? Yeah, I mean, like I see this, like, you know, we're doing this, we follow that and see a lot of people are going to that direction, which I think is great because like it makes my LinkedIn feed more fun to read, closer to Instagram at least. So I'm definitely pro that whole way of how marketing works, and especially how like demand gen works in that sense, because it's a huge part of demand gen, you know, creating that audience, right? And not just nurturing.
Yep. Well, what's funny too is like everyone sees the brand, everyone gets demand gen, but makes partnerships easier. People want to partner with you when, you know, you're active on LinkedIn and you've got momentum. And we get a lot of employees actually that find us as well. Not just like, oh, we love your LinkedIn post, so I applied, but you know, they might not know Gong's hiring for a certain role and then they see it on their feed, right? And they see, you know, they click around and people are seemingly having a great time and really enjoying their work. That makes you a lot more attractive at surface value than just like, you know, a LinkedIn like job opening that you can just go apply for.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, and I see different right direction as well. Something that I think is a bit struggling in marketing content creation in general is like, you know, the crafting part versus like the promotion part, because like, or crafting / distribution part, because you can create great things, but if you don't focus on like, you know, distribution part, it doesn't really matter because like people not coming to you if you don't have a huge, you know, channel they can publish it, right? To get the content. Like what's your take on like the whole, you know, focus of crafting, but also having a plan for like the promotion part?
For LinkedIn specifically or in general?
No, content in general, I would say.
I would say is like, I mean, quality content is what wins today. Like it, you know, content is king, or like I was saying earlier, content, like it's currency in the attention economy. So if you can come up with something
that's a good one, the currency in today's economy. Yeah,
it is, man. It is.
I quote you on that one.
And so like if you can create really good content, like I don't want to say people will come because you saw they get it out there, right? But like if you break the noise and it's like, oh wow, that's actually really different, not better, right? Then you're going to catch attention. Like me and you talk about Chris Walker all the time, because he specifically does not sound like anybody else out there, and mostly because he kind of like, and I say like lovingly attacks what's wrong with today, right? So it's like when you follow him, you get something different and unique, and therefore you want to follow it and keep up with it. Then as he puts it out on his channels, which is like he's big on LinkedIn as well, like he also hosts events, right? It's the same trickle down thing. The whole point is to like lead with one thing and then pull them into another avenue. So he also hosts like, I think it's like Thursday night events or something like that.
Yeah,
I think those Thursday night events, he turns them into a podcast, right? And so before you know it, he's got 3 distribution channels or 3 different content channels but he's really saying the same thing throughout all of them, just different perspectives on the same problem or perspectives on the same solution. So for me, it's like, look, I'm on LinkedIn. That's what I did. Next thing I did was build a newsletter. All right, cool. I have 30,000-ish followers. I'm going to try to move.
Oh, wow. That's congrats, Devin. That's a lot.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it took a while, but it's awesome to see it. And then I started a newsletter 8 weeks ago, and I'm at like, I don't know, 1,500, right? Because that's much harder to build as an email list. But you know what I mean? Then you build the email, right? Then you build another thing. And the point is, you don't start from scratch. Is you build one thing, and then you move some of those people to the next one, and then you build some people, you know what I mean? Build it and move it on to the next one.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I know time is running out. So like, I want to use. I would love to have an episode 2 with you. It probably happen in the future, but because we're friends, right?
Yeah.
But like, give you like 3 best tips in general, in content or marketing or career wise, that you share with like people.
So the first thing, these are not in any order, just kind of things that come to mind, is like when I talk to marketers, a lot of times, content marketers specifically, but marketers, I guess, and overall, is like they become order takers. They're not a strategic partner. They don't have a seat at the table. It's like, someone comes to you like, we should be doing webinars, go do a bunch of webinars. And like 2 months later, you're like, why don't we have email subscribers? Go get, build an email list. And you find yourself just zigzagging, you know what I mean? Without any real intention, without any real plan. And so it goes back to the first thing I said, which is like, have a goal and make those goals strategic. That's the first thing you can do. Even if you're an intern, like you can pick one thing and show, hey, I grew our LinkedIn followers, or hey, I grew our email subscribers, and that's led to XYZ. So like, understand your impact on the business and make sure the impact on the business is the right one. That's number one. Number 2 is understand your audience completely. Know them intimately. Understand their problems. Understand when they have those problems. Understand the language they use when they describe those problems. The emotions tied to those problems. Because when you really understand your audience, you're going to create content that truly resonates with them and is like a mirrored image of who they are. And that's what people will identify with. Let's see. Number 3, consistency. I should have led with this one, but no one likes to hear it because it's like, oh yeah, no, I got to be consistent. But people say, how did you get to 100,000 followers? How'd you get to 30,000? How'd you get to anything? Consistency, just keep on doing it. It's okay. Like when 1 week I'll have a post that gets 2,000 likes, next one will have 40. It's all good. Learn from it. What did I do on the first one? What did I miss on the second one? Right. And just keep putting out content over and over. Not only will you like grow your followers, but you'll grow your voice and your comfortability. It'll be easier. And then once it's easier, it'll be more fun.
I mean, thanks for those 3 good, best practices and tips for everyone. Yeah, I think this was it for, thank you so much, Devin. It's a pleasure to, getting your story. You're one of the best in the industry, in my opinion.
Thanks,
at least
man.
I love reading your content. So yeah, thank you so much.
Anytime, man. Talk to you later.
Bye.